Hello, everybody. My name is Jimmy Smith, and welcome to another Wine with Jimmy WSET Level 3 Understanding video. This one is on Rioja DOCa. So, in this session, we aim to identify all the key things that you need to know about Rioja in order to help you understand it for your Level 3 certificate and, of course, feel confident when you go into your examination. We will go through all the key things around Rioja, its viticultural characteristics, its winemaking. We'll also look at a Google Earth video so you can get a feel for the area. Plus, we'll go through a working written question at the end, so you will be able to understand what kind of questions are likely to arise and how you should answer them. So this is a very useful section in order to help you understand Rioja, a key wine region and wine style in Spain. As mentioned, my name is Jimmy Smith. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see all of our social media handles. So at Wine with Jimmy is my personal handle with my YouTube channel and website at Wine with Jimmy. Then I run a wine school in Fulham called West London Wine School, also South London Wine School in London as well, and then a wine bar called Streatham Wine House. So I am a wine educator, a wine buyer, a researcher. I do everything around wine. So let's have a look at La Rioja first of all and where we find it. So here you can see that we are clearly identifying for you where La Rioja sits in Spain. So La Rioja sits in northern Spain and it is in the area around Logroño. This is south of what's called the Cantabrian mountain range, which pretty much separates it from the northern parts, which is green Spain. It is next to Castilla y León, so it sits just to the east of Castilla y León and also to the north of it, in fact. And then the País Vasco, Basque Country to the north, Navarra also to the north and a little bit to the east, and then a little bit of Aragon, which is just to the east. So this area is very, very important, of course, because it produces a sizable amount of very well-known wine. You can get a sense and a feel for the climate already by looking at its location here on this map. We'll actually go into a greater detailed map in a second. But of course, the climate will generally be a continental climate, and it will be normally quite a warm continental climate for the most part. But there are some moderating influences which we will need to talk about. So that's where we find it, of course, in Spain. Now, this is in fact the region closer up. So I've identified a few geographical features here to help you understand what the landscape is like. And then we will also, of course, look at a video, a Google Earth video, which gives you a much more visual approach towards this region. So I have identified here in the top that there is the Ebro River. The Ebro River starts its life off in the Cantabrian mountain range, really kind of in the Picos de Europa, in the middle part of the Cantabrian mountain range. So that will be off here in this map, so going up towards the north. It then runs its way down through Haro, past Guardia, Logroño, as it goes then through down the Baja, as it finds its way all the way to the Mediterranean. So we call this the Ebro Valley. And it is an important river because, of course, it provides good warmth and good reflection for vineyards around it. Then the valley here has two flanking mountain ranges. And you can see that I've identified these. We have, first of all, in the top, the Cantabrian mountain range. Now, this is just a very small section and actually kind of a jutted out section of the Cantabrian mountain range. The Cantabrian mountain range actually runs from the Galicia Massif, which is all the way over in the west, all the way across northern Spain and ends up attaching to the Pyrenees. So it is an extensive mountain range which really protects most of inland Spain against the harsher weather which will come from the Atlantic and around the Bay of Biscay. And that is exactly what it does here as well. That Cantabrian mountain range offers protection against the harsher, cooler and wetter weather that comes off the Atlantic. It doesn't completely stop it. Of course, there will be effects of some areas to the north of that, and we'll get to that in a second. In the southern area, there is in fact something called the Sierra de la Demanda. And this is a mountain range which ends up going all the way down as the Sistema Ibérica towards places like Valencia. And this actually, along with the Cantabrian range, means that it kind of hems this in. And this creates kind of a heat trap in this area, causing really good ripeness and good warmth conditions for the vines of the area, along with the river. So it's a real ideal zone for viticulture. Now, we have identified here three important areas for you because La Rioja is split into three subzones of which you really will need to know. First of all is the Alavesa. So this has been written in red as it is this red district towards the north and the northwest. So this is just north of Ebro, which there's a separate district of it, and then around La Guardia. So this is actually going into the foothills of the Cantabrian mountain range, which means, of course, there will be altitude for this area. Vines will regularly be found here between 500 and 800 meters. This means that you will actually get the higher acidities from those conditions of higher altitude, plus a little bit more tannic structure is possible due to the fact that it is a slightly later picking season here. The other key thing is that we will have an effect that comes from just over the mountains. There is some effect here from the maritime, because just above here is, of course, the Atlantic Sea and areas like the green País Vasco and also Cantabria. So across here, you will get some effect, some maritime effect, which will affect the Alavesa zone. You'll also get this a little bit through this way as well towards the La Rioja Alta. So you can actually say that Rioja Alavesa is an area which is continental, but moderated by some maritime influences due to its location geographically. This actually means that grapes that are produced here that make wines in this area will be some of those that have a very great finesse and elegance behind them. That really is a balance within the wine. The next district along is the one that is identified in yellow. So this is La Rioja Alta. So Rioja Alta is an area which is fairly sizable. As you can see, this is really just the other side of the river Ebro from the Alavesa, with a little bit of it being in the same area. So this is a little bit in the País Vasco, a little bit in Navarra, but mainly in La Rioja, this yellow area. And this is in fact altitude again. Alta meaning altitude. This is around 500 to 800 meters as well. So you will find that the wines here also will have some good acidities and tannic structure. Probably less finesse than Alavesa, but certainly there's a lot produced in Alta, and really everything is made and produced in this area. It's a real sort of heartbeat of the region. And then finally, the one down towards the southern section is the La Rioja Baja. Now, this means lower, but in fact, they have recently changed the name to Oriental, which means eastern. So in your textbooks, it is written as Baja, but it will in the future be written as Oriental. These are lower than 500-meter vineyards normally. This is much more warmer continental climate. So you'll see the vineyards actually do stretch quite far away from the river because they do not need to benefit from that warmth. It is a lower warm altitude here. In fact, where Garnacha is actually quite popular. Tempranillo is grown everywhere, but Garnacha here actually has a bit of a steadfast here. It's a bit of a holding zone for it. So this is the warmest area in La Rioja Baja or Oriental. Okay, so that's really it about the subzones. Let's now have a look at a video, I believe. So I'm just going to get the link for you, and I'll pop this in here, and I'll take you through what we're looking at so you can get a bit of a feel for this area. Okay, so let's press play, and I'll take you through this. So first up, we'll probably see Spain. Here we go. And we're going to then focus in on the La Rioja zone. There's La Rioja. There's the main city of Logroño, which is a wonderful, wonderful place. So we're going to the mountain ranges here in the bottom to begin with. This is the Sierra de la Demanda. So this is that southern section, which really forms the southern boundary with places like Castilla-La Mancha. As you can see, it is very mountainous. This is the kind of starting point of the Sistema Iberica. And it therefore produces that kind of, excuse the my phone going off there, it produces, therefore, a protection area. That's the bottom valley. Now we're going to look at actually the extensive mountain range, which is in the northern area. This is the Cantabrian mountain range. And as I mentioned, it runs from Galicia all the way in the west to the Pyrenees, which you can see is that kind of yellowish divide of France in the background. We won't go all the way down there, but it really gives you an idea of this extensive mountain range, which actually protects it from that Atlantic, which is on the left-hand side of the video there. We're now going into the main wine region, and here are the foothills of the Cantabrian mountain range, where vineyards will go into. As mentioned, this will go up to about 800 meters in altitude, and really what offers the finesse and elegance due to those cooler growing conditions, and that is in the Alavesa. We're now focused on La Guardia, which is a wonderful town as well. It's a raised, fortified town, as you can see. So really beautiful, and that's kind of in the heart of the Rioja Alavesa. So that's got a bit of altitude around it. Head more north, though, where we just came from. That's where most of the altitude vineyards are. There we are, going into the Cantabrian. Now we're actually going to follow the river as it runs its course through the valley. Here is Haro, which is one of the main towns, and you can see that this river meanders its way all the way down the valley as it heads towards the Mediterranean. You'll see vineyards are stretching out to the left, which is the left bank, and to the right bank, plus places like Briones, San Vicente de la Sonsierra, and we'll go to other places, Fuenmayor, all the way to Logroño, which is your final stop on this little one. But we'll see it's an extensive patchwork quilt of vineyards. There is around 60,000 hectares of vines in Rioja. It is one of the biggest regions that we find in Spain, certainly one of the most key premium areas. And now we're heading towards kind of the boundary of La Rioja Alta and Alavesa towards La Rioja Baja, as you'll eventually get to that city. It's just coming up in the background now, which is the capital city of Logroño, which you must visit for pinchos, which is tapas up here, of course, and famous on the Trail of the Elephants in Logroño. And that's just there, as you can see, the Ebro River running just to the north of Logroño. Okay, so I can stop this now, and we will go back to our presentation. So what else do we need to understand about this? We've got a feel for the geography and how the landscape looks with the mountains and the topography and the river. Now we need to know about the grape varieties. About 88% of Rioja's red production is the grape variety Tempranillo, and we'll get to the others in a second. This variety, tempra, meaning early, it is an early budding and early ripening variety. The early budding instance here is not too bad. It won't suffer too many spring frost. It's a bit more of a consistent climate in this area. But it does ripen nice and easily. It's probably why it's one of the most principal grape varieties across Spain. It certainly has a lot of different names, synonyms across Spain, over 13 of them, because it is grown in all types of places because it's quite consistent. It ripens around 2 weeks before garnacha, on average, which means, of course, that early ripening. It's fairly thick-skinned, so it can give fairly colourful wines, but around medium acidities and tannin levels. Now, this one phrase here, saying that it is medium in tannin and acid, is actually quite generalised, because Tempranillo, depending on its site, can actually be much higher in its acids and tannins. We were mentioning earlier about the districts of Alta and Alavesa, which can go up to 800 meters. Certainly in these areas, the acidities are high and the tannins are high due to the higher altitudes, giving a cooler growing conditions, but also a longer growing season, which means they'll be able to ripen the tannins a bit more. So you can actually get a bit more structure and acidity dependent on the site. The best areas really to create those with a bit more finesse, I believe, and a bit more elegance, and to really hold on to its acidity, which can disappear quite quickly late into the season, are those areas that are moderated by oceans and seas. So you'll find that Tempranillo does very well in the Alavesa and the outer zones here. That's the famous kind of areas for it in La Rioja. They do produce a lot of local domestic wine, which is really designed for the very hot summers that we have here. And they are reds that can be chilled and served, in abundance. And these are the young and fresh styles, which will be produced via the semi-carbonic maceration method, which we have other videos on. But they make low tannin, fruity wines for early consumption. The main grape, though, of the concentrated blends, with complexities, will be Tempranillo. So it normally makes up something like 80, 90, 95% of a blend in this area. And the remaining grapes that is blended into Tempranillo will be things like Garnacha, which is losing ground in Rioja, but it will be blended still into it, adding a bit of body, alcohol, and red fruit. And then there's the varieties like Graciano and Mazuelo, which is also called Carenena across in Catalonia. These two add color, tannin, black fruit, and acidity. So these two grapes are very useful if you want to make more powerful, more modern, more complex and intense style La Riojas. You will use small percentages of both of these, Graciano and Mazuelo. They are often called the salt and pepper grape varieties because you only need small amounts of them to add that little bit of seasoning into a blend. The grape variety, though, that we are, of course, looking at is Tempranillo. Now, please ignore the line at the bottom because let me just get rid of this because it's actually from an old slide, and that's very naughty of me. But we all make wonderful mistakes from time to time. So I'm going to get rid of that for you. You need to remember that it's kind of around medium tannin and medium acidity. It, in fact, could be this line at the bottom, high acidity, high tannin and full body, when it's from areas like Alavesa. But for the most part, it isn't. So let's have a look at what we get in terms of characteristics. So we find that with Tempranillo, it is a very red-fruited style. In fact, in the very early days, when this grape variety was first being recounted and recorded, it was thought that it was brought by monks from France along the Camino de Santiago. So that is the Way of St. James, which goes all the way to the Santiago Cathedral. Now, they believed it was Pinot Noir. So that's really testament to its characteristics. So you'll find here things like red plum, strawberry, red cherry are characteristics you may find with Tempranillo. But with DNA profiling, it's been quite scientifically proven that it is not Pinot Noir. It is a variety indigenous to the landscape of Iberia. Other characteristics you may find will often come from the oak. So you may find the oaky notes. You may find the coconut notes, certainly if it is American oak barrels, or even things like vanilla, which is located down here at the bottom. Also, the wine will go through extensive aging and oxidation. This will create things like leather, meaty characteristics, but also things like mushroom as well. So they are wines that are fuller and richer than a Pinot, but do have an inherent similarity, which tends to be this red fruit going to oxidative, mushroomy, gamey notes. So you can see how they would have got it confused in the early days with Pinot Noir. So that is the grape variety itself. Now, winemaking options are things that we have already kind of talked about. So let's go through these things. So first of all, the young and fresh styles, which are normally made for the domestic local market, are made by the method of semi-carbonic maceration. So this is the same method, remember, which is very famous in Beaujolais in France, which produces these low tannin but brightly fresh and juicy wines with a lot of reductive characteristics, such as bubble gum, such as banana, candied fruits, and so on. But that isn't the styles which are most well known around the world. The styles which are most well known are these long-term aged styles and complex styles. and these will be made via these techniques below. So they will be destemmed, whereas semi-carbonic maceration will be fully stemmed fruit, so it hasn't split, and it will go into a vat, and then carbon dioxide will be used for maceration. Here we destem it. They don't want any of the green elements that may come from the stems. They are then crushed and undergo traditional maturation. So that should say fermentations. The traditional fermentations would be things like adding yeast and going through normal management in the winemaking. That normal management is vigorous cap management techniques. So this is things like pumping over, punching down, rack and return, and that is to really increase the levels of skin contact during its fermentation. So it will therefore, with the heat, absorb more of these color, tannin, but also flavor characteristics into the wine. So there is quite a bit of these producers will do quite high levels of extraction, certainly for things like Rioja reservas. And then afterwards, the maturation side of things mean that it will be matured for quite long, extensive times. So this will be many, many years in oak and in bottle. And this long-term oak maturation could be in American, which tends to give these sweeter coconut, vanilla, butterscotch notes, and French oak, which tends to give cedar, smoke, cigar characteristics. They are mixing it up with these. Traditionally, it is American oak, with more modern producers using French oak barriques today. The Rioja whites of the area just need a quick mention. Although Rioja is mainly red and rosé, there is a small percentage of white produced. So this is Rioja Blanco. Normally, these are made from Viura, though there are 8 varieties that are permitted to produce white Rioja. Traditionally, the styles are aged for quite long, extensive periods in American oak, and we're talking many years, also with significant amounts of bottle age. Styles like Vino Tondonia, their Rioja Blanco reservas, are quite famous for this. These will be exceedingly golden in color. They'll be rounded, rich and smooth with very distinctive, nutty, purposely oxidized characters, marzipan, almond, walnut, with these dried fruit notes. They are delicious. It is the acidity which really keeps them balanced over these long oxidative aging techniques. Though most Rioja whites today are actually made via modern winemaking techniques without oxidation and in stainless steel. And this is making very fresh early drinking styles. But there are a few of them that are doing barrel fermentations, which create slightly rounder, creamier expressions for your white Riojas. Okay, so aging lengths, just to mention, because it is important to look at these when you are talking about all Spanish wines. We have here, the first column is the classification. So that is what you will find on the label. On the back label, it is the trust seal, the stamp of approval. So that is the classic color trust seal here. You've got the green, the red, the dark red, and the blue. The actual aging requirements, and then finally the style that will be produced from that. Okay, so first up in this line, we have joven, or it can be conserja. Now this has that greenish stamp on the back of the label. This is actually no oak aging requirement, and the wines will normally be released in the spring after harvest. There are unofficial terms like semi-crianza here and roble as well, but normally these are only a little bit of short aging. The style for a joven, which doesn't have to be found on the label, so it could often just say Rioja, will be youthful, fresh, and many of them are made by a semi-carbonic maceration. This is most of Rioja, as most of Rioja is drunk in Spain, and it needs to be this lighter, fresher style. Crianza is the next one. Crianza is a total of 2 years aging, with 6 months in barrel and the rest in bottle. Now, this is different in La Rioja and Ribera del Duero. La Rioja and Ribera del Duero has 1 year in oak and then 1 year in bottle, whereas the rest of Spain has 6 months in oak as a minimum. So it's slightly stricter for the famous regions of La Rioja and Ribera del Duero. These are fresh and youthful, but with a softness and roundness and a bit of complexity from the oak. Then we have La Rioja Reserva. And reservas are really famous. They are 3 years total aging, of which 1 year will be in oak, and then 2 years will be in bottle. So that adds up to your 3 years. And then Gran Reserva is in fact 5 years total aging, 2 years in oak, and 3 years in bottle. In Europe, the real kind of high-end wines of each region will normally be around a minimum of 5 years aging, like your top Brunello da Montalcinos, for instance, and Barolo Reservas, etc. These will create wines which are more complex, with integrated oak, with oxidative notes and oaky characteristics, and will often be, as it says here, in American oak. Okay, so that's your aging classifications. Now, just a little bit to work through as a partial written question. You may, in your examination, get a question that has a map, and you are expected to identify perhaps certain areas. Here is La Rioja, and it's split into those 3 zones. So it says here, identify the 3 subzones of La Rioja from this map. Number 1 is Rioja Alta, number 2 is Rioja Alavesa, and number 3 is Rioja Oriental or Baja. So that is 3 marks. In subregion 2, which you have identified as Alavesa, what conditions in the vineyard produce wines of finesse and elegance? So this is understanding what we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. Rioja Alavesa is situated in the foothills, the lower part of the Cantabrian mountain range, with vineyards sitting normally at about 500 to 800 meters, with a continental climate moderated by the Atlantic. Remember, it's the most northwesterly point of La Rioja. This gives lighter wines with a more marked acidity. Lighter, by the way, equals elegance, equals finesse. So these are words, if English is not your first language, you'll need to understand. That's 4 marks available. You are a winemaker looking to produce a red Rioja that is deep colored. So let's start to highlight some of these. So deep colored, fine. Powerful, so very important. And with high tannins, with a great ability to age. So deep color, powerful, and high tannins are really thinking about extraction techniques, because we are not talking about the vineyards here. You are a winemaker. So therefore, we are talking about winemaking techniques. State and describe 3 winemaking techniques, not grape growing techniques, to employ to achieve this style. So first of all, vigorous cap management, such as pumping over and punching down to increase color, flavor, and tannin extraction. And you could say during fermentation. Number 2, blending with varieties such as Graciano and Mazuelo that are high in color, tannin, and acidity. So it will increase all the things we want from our style that we're wishing to produce. And then long, extensive aging in new, it is important here, new French or American oak to impart more complexity in tannin, give the wine more structure. So this would give you 6 marks, and it's all about linking what you'd learned in your session 3, which is winemaking techniques, in with La Rioja. Describe the style of a traditional white Rioja. Now, this may throw some of you because it's a very small section in the textbook, but it can come up. The style then, oh, it's not happening. Here we go. The style then is produced from highly acidic Vieira. Normally, you don't have to say that. You'd actually need to say normally produced from highly acidic Vieira and matured for extensive periods in American oak to develop a deep golden color with rich nutty notes. That's what you need to do to get the 4 marks there, and they're rather delicious if you like oxidative wines. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you have found this session very useful. As I mentioned, my name is Jimmy Smith. I am the owner and founder of West London Wine School, but this has been for the Wine with Jimmy YouTube. So please have a look at the YouTube channel. If you have any questions, please comment at the bottom of this YouTube video. Otherwise, get in touch at West London Wine at South London Wine, my 2 wine schools, plus Streatham Winehouse, my bar in South London. Next time you're in London, please come and see us for a class, for a glass, or for a bottle. Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye.